everyone, welcome to your week 9 wrap-up and intro to week 10. Congratulations on this week's quiz on water-soluble vitamins. Most of you did really well on it, and I had very little feedback for you. Just a couple of questions gave some people problems, and the feedback on that is in Cafe McKay. This afternoon, or today, I would like to go through your a couple of frequently asked questions in the journal, and then give you a little intro to your next discussion forum on sodium. So let's get to it. The first frequently asked question was about oral contraceptives and vitamin deficiencies. Certainly any medication is going to have some impact on some biochemistry in your body, and a significant amount of them, or a significant number of medications, do interfere with nutrients or your nutritional status via one of many different mechanisms. And with regard to oral contraceptives and hormone replacement therapy, which are basically estrogen medications, we do know that they interfere with your B6, folate, and magnesium status, again, via probably different mechanisms. So the thing to keep in mind, if you are taking one of these medications, or if you know of someone who is to make sure that you're getting plenty of these specific nutrients in your diet. And if you're not, then this may be a case when you might want to consider taking a good multivitamin formulated at about 100% of the daily value for most nutrients. In most cases, this can help supplement your diet, not substitute for real food. Supplements can never substitute for real food, but they can supplement a diet, even a good diet, if for some reason you're not getting enough of certain nutrients in your diet, or if, in the case of certain medications, if your body is using up certain nutrients more frequently or at a higher rate. And the second frequently asked question is about folate masking a B12 deficiency. I do review this in the online lecture, but I want to go through this again to make sure that you get this. So someone was asking about, is the folate rescuing the B12 deficiency, and had a general curiosity about how this works. So let me just review this briefly. In a folate deficiency or a B12 deficiency, they both manifest themselves as the same type of anemia. Remember, in nutrition, there are several different types of, well, in life, there are several different types of anemia. Most frequently, when you say anemia, you mean a low red blood cell count. And the most common anemia is due to an iron deficiency, but there are several other reasons for someone having a low red blood cell count or an anemia. And in the case of nutrition, or in the case of this week's lecture, we learned about how a deficiency of either folate or vitamin B12 can cause the same type of anemia, which is called megaloblastic anemia or macrocytic anemia. Both words mean large cells. So macro, large, cytic means cells. So with the lack of B12 or folate, you will have cells, red blood cells, that cannot divide. So they make two copies of everything, and they just get big, and they cannot divide. So you have more large red blood cells, which means you have a lower total count of red blood cells in this case. Now, if you give someone with megaloblastic anemia both folate and B12, it will cure the anemia. If you just give someone with megaloblastic anemia folate alone, it will cure the anemia. That is, the cells will start to divide properly, so you'll get more smaller cells, so it won't look like anemia anymore, except if you have an underlying B12 deficiency, it won't show up anymore as this megaloblastic or large cell anemia, because you're basically curing it with the excess folate or with the additional folate. But if that anemia is due to a low B12 level, giving someone extra folate could just cover up this symptom that could have initially been due to a B12 deficiency. And if that goes undetected, then you can get into trouble because a deficiency of vitamin B12 can cause neurological damage and impact your cognitive function and peripheral nerves, etc. There's a whole host of things that can occur with a B12 deficiency. So here's the nitty-gritty biochemistry of it. Again, you have this in your slides for your online lecture. But basically what's going on is that when you eat folate in food, it does get processed in your cells, and it goes to a couple different types of forms: dihydrofolate, tetrahydrofolate, and then the next compound, or the intermediate in the pathway, is called this 5,10-methylene tetrahydrofolate. And once the folate gets into this form, that is the form that can then be used to create DNA bases. All right. So there's my little chicken scratching there. So long as you have some folate that can get converted to this 5,10-methylene tetrahydrofolate form, you can still make DNA. That is, you can replicate the cell, you can make 2 copies of the nucleus, and the cell can divide. That folate, once it does that and helps create the DNA, it can go back and get recycled to dihydrofolate and then continue that cycle. All right. Now, not all of your folate gets stuck as methylene tetrahydrofolate. Some of it goes on to the next step in the pathway, excuse me, and that's called 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. Now, at this point, it cannot go back. It cannot, this is not a reversible reaction. You cannot go back to the 5,10-methylene tetrahydrofolate. So once your folate is in this methylated form, in order for it to get recycled back to this working form of folate that can then create DNA bases, it needs to be activated by B12. So if B12 is there, all is good, and it can get converted back to this tetrahydrofolate form, produce more of this 5,10-methylene tetrahydrofolate, and create bases so your cells can replicate. However, if you do not have enough B12, all right, the 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate gets stuck. It gets trapped in this form because the B12 is not available to bind this methyl group, which can then activate the folate. So if you have no B12, it cannot get recycled to this tetrahydrofolate form. All right. But if you give someone folate, you're still able to get it down to produce this 5,10-methylene form, which can create DNA, which means you can divide cells. So without the B12, if you give someone enough folate, you will cure this anemia. But if the anemia is due to a B12 deficiency rather than a folate deficiency, then you'll still then you won't see this symptom of a B12 deficiency, and you will have to do a different test to make sure, to rule out whether the deficiency was due to folate, lack of folate, or a lack of B12. So hopefully that clarifies it a little bit. Now, just a brief introduction to your next discussion forum. I just want to make sure people understand the difference between the information that I give about the purpose of the discussion forum versus the actual grading criteria. I think a couple people are getting mixed up with that. The purpose of each assignment is given to you. And again, this is just a big overview of what I hope you get out of this particular discussion forum. But what you're going to be graded on, specifically the specific points that we're grading you on, are outlined clearly in the grading criteria. And the link for the grading criteria is right there in the description of the discussion forum. So when you're looking at the grading criteria for the initial posting for this particular discussion, you're given a position and you need to support your assigned position. You need to give 3 relevant points. It's best if you incorporate supportive evidence, sound supportive evidence, from either the required readings, the lectures, or, as most of you have figured out, it's okay and encouraged to go beyond those and find other reliable sources of information to support your statements. All right, and make sure that you provide a reference if you are going beyond or outside of the required readings or the lecture when you're supporting your statements that you're making. It's 20 points per relevant point that you make. Of your 3 points that you make in your argument, they're 20 points each. They have to be distinct from one another. It can't be just a variation of the same thing. They have to be valid and coherent. You have to state them clearly. Okay, and valid means that they are substantiated. That is, you have something to back them up. You have a reference to back them up. Now, when you're making your points, again, you want them to be distinct, and you want to think about, we're not always used to arguing a point that we don't necessarily agree on, or supporting a position that we disagree with, but at some point in your life or in your career, you're going to have to put on a different hat. You're going to have to assume a role and do something that you're uncomfortable with. But this is an opportunity to look at the other side of an equation. So what I'm asking you to do here is to basically put on your hat, your nutrition expert hat, and start arguing for a particular position. Pretend as if you were hired to be a consultant for either some agency that's trying to argue in front of Congress to support policies, to change dietary sodium intake policies for food manufacturers, either one way or the other. So basically, you need to assume a role and go with it. All right. So in your reply postings, that's when you will be able to kind of debrief and look at the other side, see what things it made you think of, what questions you may still have, etc. And then don't forget to also look at the grading criteria for your reply postings as well. So here's the argument that you have to support or refute. The statement: food manufacturers and restaurants should be required to meet new government standards for acceptable levels of salt and sodium in foods. Again, put on your hat, pretend like you have the job that you've been hired to argue one way or the other, and give it your best. You would look at the evidence and you would support your arguments with that evidence. All right. So with that, I hope you all have a great week. And as always, if you need any help, you know where to reach us. And if you need technical support, don't forget our tech support folks are available as well. So I hope you all have a great week. Thank you. Bye-bye.